hopefully. Anyway, we shall see. Anybody doing SBL, by the way? Nobody doing SBL? Okay, that's a shame. Am I not loud enough? Shall I say, is that okay, volume wise? All good? Okay, all good. Right, without further ado then, so do shout at me if something goes wrong. So, for those of you doing FM, MPVs, or will be doing MPVs in the future, first thing I want to deal with is dealing with inflation. So, let's say that we've got sales at 100 and inflation is 10%. What would sales be in 1 year's time? I am going to treat you like children. What would sales be like in 1 year's time? 110, yeah. So in a spreadsheet, you do obviously 100 times by what? Yeah, so 1.1, 1.10. I know I'm coming away from that, but so as long as you just put your percentage rate in there, so times 1 point, whatever the inflation is. And then if you do this kind of thing, to the power of the number of years. So this is where the spreadsheet can really help you. So what I will have done there, in the formula box, which I will do in a minute, I'll have written 100 times by the inflation rate to the power of that cell. Okay, and that will really help, because once you've done that, you then copy, paste it into year 2, and that number 2 there will just automatically happen, and year 3 will automatically happen. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Do say if it doesn't. So I'm going to try and do that on here now. Can you see this? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to put in here 100 times by 1.10 to the power of, then click that number 1 there. So if you set it up like that, and then the key with the ACCA spreadsheet is that little button there, that little cross. Okay, that's your copy and paste sort of thing. So you get hold of the cross and you drag it across, and it should all work. And I think I can make this bigger. No, I can't. Let me just shorten that bit. Okay, does that all make sense? Yes. Sort of thing? Yeah, alright. So let's test whether it does. If you then got told then that costs were 40 and inflation was 5%, what would you put into your formula? I'll give you the first number, 40. Then what would you put? Times by 1.05, so 1 plus the inflation rate, 1.05, to the power of 1. Yeah, so now once you get good at it, you know, this is really saves you loads of time. Copy, drag it across, that will go across, and finally the next one would go across, and I will do it with you. Okay, so costs equals 40 times by 1.05 to the power of, make sure you do it as a cell reference. How do you copy and paste? The little corner, yeah, just a little box. You have to wait, not when it's a big arrow like that, when it becomes a really tiny little cross. I know you can't see it very well, but when it becomes a tiny little cross, that's when you copy it across. Okay. I've done sums here already, but hopefully you know how to do sums, but I'll show you in a minute anyway. Okay, so far so good. So just total them up. And then you get told investment is 150. So let's go put that investment in. Investment goes in year what? Year zero. What is year zero, for those of you who have done this sort of thing before? Yeah, day one of year one. Okay, it's really important. Year zero is day one of year one. So what's year one? The end of year one. So year zero is day one of year one. Year one is the end of year one. Year two? The end of year two, end of year three. So year zero is a bit odd. It's day one of year one. Right, so I'm just going to pop that into my spreadsheet here. Minus 150. And now when we do a NPV, net present value, what we're going to do, what I want to know is, well, would you rather have £68 in year one, or it's not 68, but pretend that was 68. Would you rather have 68 in year one or 68 in year three? If I was to give you £68, would you rather, or $18, would you rather have it in year one or in year three? In year one, because of the time value of money, okay? So all the NPV does is say, right, what I want now, I want the present value of these figures. I want to know what that's worth today in year zero. So, to work out the present value, this is where using the spreadsheet is really good. You do what I've done there. So, present value of the cash flows. So your formula is, so formula just means equal sign, NPV. Okay, NPV in brackets 68 colon 87, whatever it is, close my brackets. I'll show you it again, don't worry. Why did that happen there? Let's do it again. Equals NPV. I didn't put my rate in, that's why. 10% discount rate, 10% is the value of money. So NPV 0.1 being what? 10%, comma, so you put your rate in, then you put your cash flows in. I want the present value, please, of that, colon, to that. Close my bracket. And so what you're telling the spreadsheet is, I want the present value of these three numbers discounted down at the rate I've told you, 10%. Okay? So it'll do that. So hopefully it'll do that. And it says, right, the present value of all those three added together is 191. What's the present value of 150? 150, because that's today. It's already in today's money. All I've done with the 191 is make those what it's worth today. Okay? So what's the net present value in total? 41, yeah. 191 is the value of all the cash flows in the future. 150 is the value now. The net present value is 41. So I'll just put that in there. Equals sum, open brackets, there, colon to there, close my brackets, and I'm done. Okay. Just do that with you on here. I want the present value of those three. Equals NPV, open my bracket, what's next? The rate, which was 10%, that'll be given in the question. So 10%, comma, all the cash flows from the 68 colon to the 86.7 or whatever it is. Close your bracket, press enter, and it will do it all for you. Okay, so really, really, really useful. Yeah, that's that really. Any questions? Good, keep it that way. IRR, so IRR is, let's talk about it here. Anybody know what IRR is? It stands for internal rate of return. Anybody know what it actually means? Okay, we discounted down at 10% and we came out with a net present value of whatever it was, 41 or something, can't remember that. But anyway, so that means even discounting down at 10%, we made a profit of 41. So is the return better than 10% or not? We discounted down at 10% and we beat it. So is the return better than 10% or not? It's better. And that's what the IRR is. The IRR says, well, what is the real rate of return then? And the way we do that is we use the function called IRR. If you look in some old textbooks and everything, this used to be really, really difficult. It used to be really, you had to guess percentages and do all sorts of things. Now all you have to do is IRR, open the brackets, minus 150, colon, what do you think the next figure is going to be? 86.7. Basically, you're just saying to it, give me the IRR of all of those. Okay, just tell them you only need the numbers and close the bracket, and it will do it for you. Okay, so let me go and do that with you live. Let's hope I get this right. Equals what? What's the formula? IRR. Open my bracket. 150 colon 87. Close the brackets, and it's done it for me. Okay. Any questions? Sure. Super. Right. Bit of a recap then. When we did net present value, MPV, rate, cash flows. In our question, what was the rate? Can you remember? That was the 10%. 0.1, put that in, it's easier. Comma, cash flows. Notice we didn't include year zero. Why not? Because that's already in today. It's already been discounted. Can't discount it down any more than today's rate. So not including year zero in your cash flows. Okay, don't do that. Then when you want to work out what the actual rate is, it's IRR cash flows. Do you include year zero? Yes, you do in this case. Okay, so do include year zero. Super. And that's where we are so far. All happy? Even if you're not doing FM or whatever, AFM. Okay. MIRR. Anybody know what it stands for? Anyone's doing APM? Modified internal rate of return. And all that means is, if the project was a 20% IRR, what that project, the way it's worked out, the way it's mathematically worked out, it's presuming you can always get 20%. Well, you might not be able to always get 20%. So what you should do is IRR cash flows, but if you're doing MIRR, if you're going to modify it, you do just like the IRR cash flows. Would you include year zero? It's just like IRR. Yes, you would include year zero. But then you put in, right, tell me what the discount rate is, tell me what the discount rate was. Okay, seems a bit strange, but that's what you would do. But if a reinvestment rate is given, because maybe we can't reinvest and get 20%, then it would be cash flows, 10%, reinvest at whatever figure you're given. So if it's given, that's what you do. MIRR, cash flows, just like normal IRR. Cost of capital, the discount rate, comma, what I can get, what's my reinvestment rate. So the MIRR would be 22.67 there with a 10% discount rate and a 20% investment rate. So hopefully I should be able to do this here. So MIRR, you're telling the computer, the spreadsheet, right, I want MIRR, open brackets, from minus 150 to where? To the 87, to the end, comma. The discount rate I've used in all of this is 10%, comma, but I can reinvest at 20%, 0.2. Put it all in, 0.22, that's how it'll come out. 0.22 obviously is 22.6%, yeah, just with a decimal place across twice. Okay, so that is that really. I'm not going to spend too long on that one because it's just like IRR really. Comma, the figures that you're doing it on, comma the discount rate, comma the reinvestment rate if given. Recap, net present value, MPV, rate, cash flows. Does that cash flows include year zero? No. Okay, because year zero is already discounted down. IRR, how'd you calculate it? What's the formula? equals IRR, just cash flows. Yeah, really simple. Just put your cash flows in. Do you include year zero? Yes. And then MIRR equals MIRR cash flows, comma what? The discount rate, the cost of capital, comma reinvestment rates. Include year zero because that's what you do with IRR. Okay. Is the sound okay, by the way, back there? Oh, good. Okay, learning curve. Bit trickier. If the first item takes you 12 hours, how long would, say, the 7th item take? Quicker or not quicker? Under normal circumstances, if I was to say, right, make one of these for me, first one will take you 12 hours to make. By the time you got good at it in 8 times, hopefully you'd be doing it quicker, yeah? And how much quicker depends on the learning curve. Okay, so the examiner's told us the learning curve is 75%. All right. But what the examiner wants to know is, so how long would it take to make the 8th item, the 8th bottle of water? And the way you work that out is this. You want the total time it takes to make 8 items minus what? If I want to know how long to make the 8th, total time for 8. So think about it. I want to know how long to make the 8th. Total time for 8 minus the total time for, not 1, for 7. So if you think about it, so 7 and then an 8th. I want to know how long it takes to do this 8. So the total for 8 less the total for 7, that will be that. So that's how you do it. You do the total for 8, total for 7. So let's say, if we knew this, if the total for 8 was 80 hours and the total for 7 was 72 hours, how long did it take us to make the last one? Total for 8 was 80 hours, the total for 7 was 72 hours. It took us 8 hours. That's what it's trying to do, okay? But to get to that total for 8 is quite tricky. You have to do the average time per unit and then times it by 8. To get to the total time for 7 then, what would you have to do? Average time per unit times by 7, okay? But your average time per unit will be different here than it will be here. Why? Because you're getting better at it, so that average time changes all the time. But this is the only way we can do it mathematically. Okay, hope you're still with me, because I know this is tricky. So the average time per unit is Y. So just mathematically it's Y. Y equals A. Anybody know what A is in this question? No. This is the average time, Y. That's the average time. That's what we're going to try and count. Anybody know what A is? 12 hours. 12 hours. A is how long the first one took. Okay. Times by X. X in this question. Have a guess. Not the learning curve, close. It's 8. Okay, so it's just telling it how many units, 8, to the power of B. All right, that's if you've still got the will to live after doing all this. B, let's just put that in, 12 times what? 8 to the power of B. And then we'll say, what's the power of B, Richard? Well, the power of B is log, in brackets, R. What's R? That's the learning curve, 0.75, divided by log 2. You don't have to know the maths. I have no idea what's going on here mathematically. I just know that's what you do. Okay? So log R divided by log 2. So let's try and do this live. I'm bound to mess this up, but let's try. So, let me open up that a bit again. Close that down. Okay, so let me make this a bit bigger. The average time B. Let me do B first. If if I can control my own computer. Let me put B here, right? So B's going in there. Can you remember from memory, how do we calculate B? Log in brackets, make sure you do that. Log in brackets R, what was R? 75%, so 0.75. Okay, close your bracket. What's next? Divided by log. In brackets 2 or 2? In brackets 2. Yeah, so it's log, I know you can't see that, but that says log in brackets 0.75 divided by log 2, and that will give you some weird number. Okay, so, but you've got it, you know you need that weird number. Now you can do it. Average time per unit, y equals a times x to the power of b. So you think equals, what was y in this question? What was a in this question? 12. 12 times by 8, so that 8 there, super, to the power of, which is the little 10 sign, to the power of that cell there. That's where the spreadsheet really helps you. You know, you've got your B and then do it, and the average time per unit is. So what's the total time? Good, so that, so equals that times by what? 8. Okay, I can do all that again then. Average time per unit this time for 7 units. Y equals A, what's A? 12, the time for the first item, times by 7 this time, well done, to the power of that big figure there. Done. Okay, spreadsheet really helping you out. Total time equals 5.35 times by 7, and you're done. Okay, you know, this is really tricky. This isn't easy stuff. This is proper exam standard nightmare. So, total time to take your 8th. I'm not asking for the figure, just what would you put in your computer? Yeah? Perfect. Okay? Okay, so what happened there? All right, so let's just do that again. So log is 0.75, yeah. And then we said that's how we worked out B. We were okay with that. At 8 units, came to 5.063. Y equals what? A, which was 12, times 8, which is just the number of units, to the power of B, which you'd already calculated. Yeah. A did the same for 7, so we'll just quickly do that. 12 again, times by 7 to the power of B. And then you got the total time. How did you get the total time? Average time times by 8. How did you get, well, yeah, we're quicker than the computer, good. And then, how did you get it for 7? Average time for 7 units times by 7. Yeah, and quite straightforward then. And then finally, time to make 8 was 3.043, which was hopefully that minus that. Okay. Any questions? Sure? Super. All right, let's keep going. So make sure we go home learning something. Do those cash flows include year 0 or not? No, they don't, because what's the point? You've already discounted year 0 is year 0. IRR, how do you work it out? What's your formula? IRR, cash flows, straightforward. Include year 0, MIRR equals IRR, cash flows, comma, cost of capital, comma, reinvestment rate. Get you. Very good indeed. Super. Okay, and you include year 0 just like you do when you're doing MIRR. Learning curve. I'm not sure what it's going to come up with here. I'm guessing it's going to come up with how do you work out B. Log in brackets R divided by log in brackets 2. Time for first times by number of items, yeah, to the power of. Time for the first one, times by the number of items to the power of B. Okay, and then B we know. Cool, good. Weighted average cost of capital then, for those of you who do it. So market values is what you should use for your weighted average cost of capital, unless told otherwise, but you virtually always do. If your cost of equity is 10%, then what is your weighted average cost of capital for those shares? So you're 100, what they want is 10%, so what do you have to give them? 10, yeah? So your cost of capital is 10. Make sense? Ordinary shareholders, there's 100 of them, they want a 10% return, I've got to give them at least 10. I want to give them more, but bank loan, 100, the interest rate's 4.8%, ignoring tax here. How much do I have to give the bank? Not a trick question. 4.8, yeah, just multiplying them through. So that's all kind of easy and straightforward. And then the nightmare one, until the spreadsheet came about, was redeemable loan. Redeemable loan was just pages and pages of trying to calculate it. But all I want you to know is loans are always quoted per 100 blocks. Okay, so even if you've got 10 million billion, it's quoted as 100 block, right? That's really important. That is the market value of that 100 block. That's all you need to know, okay? So you've got the market value per 100 block. Then this is what you have to do. This is a 5-year redeemable loan. What happens in year 5? You have to pay it back. That's why it's called redeemable. Okay, it has to be redeemed. You have to pay back that loan. In what year? In year 5. What happens in year 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5? What do you have to pay? Interest. So the examiner will tell you it's a 5-year loan, so you put down 5 years, start with year 0. He'll tell you what the interest rate is. We're ignoring tax tonight. Okay, now the trick here is in year 0, does anybody know what you put? Okay, in year 0 you put the market value. All right, so that's the tricky bit. That's the bit that doesn't really make sense. Why do I do that? I don't know. You do. Okay, so it's 110, and you put it in brackets as well. It's a negative figure. Okay. What's your cash flow in year 1 if this is a 10% interest loan? What's your cash flow in year 1? Have a guess. It's 10% interest loan. It's based on a block of 100. 10% of 100 is 10. You'll be paying £10 interest. Okay. Ignore what the market value is. You've got 100 loan. You're paying 10% on it, so you can pay out 10, but as a positive figure. Year 2. Have a guess. 10 again. Year 3. 10 again. Year 4. 10 again. We could be here all night if I'd done a 30-year loan. It'd be quite good. Year 5. How much? 110. Why 110? Yeah, you're paying back the loan, aren't you? So you're paying back your interest of 10, but you're also paying back this 100 loan. Okay, it's always in a block of 100. So in year 5, you're paying back 110, presuming there's no premium on redemption. If there was a premium on redemption of 20%, what would that figure be? If there was a premium on redemption, so the examiner's being annoying, you've got to think, right, okay, I'm having to pay back, I'm redeeming 100 at the year end. But he says, no, you're not. There's a premium on redemption of 20%. How much are you going to give back then? 120. Yeah, 120 plus the 10 interest for year 5 as well. Yeah, so you have 130. But in our question, it's 110 because 100 is the capital you're paying back, 10 is the interest, and there's no premium on redemption. Okay. And then once you've done that in your spreadsheet, you are away. Okay, and it should come to 7.53%. let's go do that live. So, I've written out my 5 years. What goes into year 0, folks? Market value, positive or negative? Negative, well done. What goes into year 1? 10, if that's... What if it was an 8% interest? 8, you know, so 10, 10, 10, 10, 110. If there's what? If there's no premium on redemption. Okay, and then all you do here equals IRR. Okay, we all know IRR. In brackets, what am I going to do now? Minus 110, colon, all the way down to there, please, Mr. Examiner. And that's what it does for you. Okay, so I'll do it again for you. That's 0. Gobbledygook. Just so you know, by the way, to turn gobbledygook into a percentage, it's that percentage button there. I don't know if you can see it. You press that and it gives you so. Do you want a percentage point to 2 decimal points? Yes, I do. Press that and it should work. But oops, I'm in the wrong plot. 7.53%. Let's do it again. Equals IRR. Open your brackets. Do we include year 0 in an IRR? Yes, we do. All the way to the bottom. So it's just colon then to where you want it to go. Then it'll fill in the rest for you. And then press enter. Okay, and that was, you know, that back in the day that would take me an hour to teach because there was so many calculations, but not now. Just so you're clear, if tax was 30%, which he will give you tax in the exam, to be fair, the cost wouldn't be 10 to you. The cost would be 7. Okay, the cost would be 7, and all you do is you say, right, I know the cost is 10, but I'm going to times it by 70%. Where did I get 70% from? 100 minus 30. Okay, so that's how you do it. You put in your original 10, and you times it by 70%. Why 70%? Because tax is 30%. Your tax bill is coming down by 30%, so it doesn't cost you as much, because you've got interest payment going through your tax return. So you just do the 7 all the way down. What would the final year be? 107. The 100 you have to pay back plus your interest of 7, and your IRR would be, your cost of redeemable debt would be 4.71%. Okay, so that, I wasn't going to do that tonight, but we're getting on well, so. Okay, so you've worked out your cost of debt to 7.53%. And then you just pop that back into your weighted average cost of capital working. Okay, so IRR from the bottom, colon, to the, or from the top to the bottom. Those figures there. Yeah, and then we finish off our weighted average cost of capital. So, you put that in. Obviously, that 8.3 is 110 times by that percentage. But now, the reason why this is called the weighted average cost of capital, it says, well, you've got 3 different costs of capital here. How do I work out the weighted average then of them all? What is the weighting? The weighting is these. I've got 100 shares, I've got 100 bank loan, I've got 110 redeemable debt. So, to work out the weighted average cost of capital, you add down the weighting. So I've got 310, you can't see that very well, but you've got 310's worth of capital, the cost of which is 23.1. I've got 310 forms of capital, the cost of which is 23.1. So what's the weighted average cost of capital? What's the average of that then? How would I work that out? I've got 310 at a cost of 23.1. Anybody know? You just divide one by the other. And it should come to 7%. So let me show you how we do that. That was, I can't because I haven't got it on here. Can't show you. But that's basically 23.08 divided by 310. Okay, that's what works out. And that will be your answer for a whole weighted average cost of capital question. Okay, all good? All happy? Have to speed up a little bit, I think. So let's speed up with a cheeky recap. Net present value equals NPV what? This is what you did about 30 minutes ago, folks. NPV what? Rate and then cash flows. Okay, rate, comma, cash flows. Do you include year zero? Nope. IRR, the easy one, equals IRR cash flows. MIRR, the trickier one, equals MIRR cash flows, comma, cost of capital, comma, reinvestment, yeah, well done. Include year zero. Learning curve. Average time per unit, how do you work it out? No. Y equals, what was A? Time for the first. X, the number of units you're doing, to the power of B. How do you calculate B? Log R divided by log 2. Well done. If the learning rate was 80%, what would your R be? 0.8. Yeah, it's not always 0.75. It depends what the learning curve is. If it was 80%, it would be 0.8. Log 2 stays the same all the time. Okay, then cost of redeemable debt. How do we work that out? We put the market value in first, then what do we put it in? Years 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. The interest charge, yeah, whatever that was, the interest charge, put that in. And what goes on into year 4? Capital plus your interest, yeah, based on a hundreds loan. In that case, I'm presuming what? There's no premium on redemption. Good. And then you'd have to do, well, what would you have to do to work out the cost of that debt? An IRR function, okay, equals IRR, cash flows, done. It will give you it. Okay, and that's the cost of debt. Woohoo. Right, this one takes a little bit of thinking about, but what I'm trying to show you here is that your sales could be 200, 280 or 350, but we don't know what they're going to be. All right, but they could be 200, 280 or 350, but we don't know. It might depend on the weather. Right? Happy with that? So we've got to make a decision. Should we make 200, should we make 280, or should we make 350? But we have to make a decision now, and then just fingers crossed we make the right decision. Okay? Now, if I did decide to make 200, and demand was 200, how many would my actual sales be? Not a trick question. 200. So far, so good. If I decided to make, back in the past, 200, but actually the demand for it was 280, how many would I actually sell? 200, wouldn't I? So I had to make the decision back then. So, bad news. What about in the next one? Back then, I made the decision to make 200. Sales were actually 200. What about in the next one? 280 I made. Demand was 200. 200. 280, 280, 280. 280, 350. 280, 350, 200. Has anybody noticed what's happening here? We're always going for the lowest one. It's always going to be the lowest out of the two. Okay, if you was to do that on a spreadsheet, like one I've prepared earlier, you would do equals MIN, which is a shortening for what? Minimum, yeah? Open brackets. What would you put in here? 200, colon, 200. I want the minimum out of those two, whichever figures you want your minimum of. And then once you've done that, the beauty of the spreadsheet, get the little cross and drag it down to your heart's content. Okay, and it would do it all for you a lot quicker than you could do yourself. Similarly, you could use the max function, which would work out the greater of the two. Just use the max function. So that's the minimum function. Quite straightforward. You'd copy and paste these in from the question, then you'd do your function. I appreciate. How are we doing for time? We're okay, actually, aren't we? Yeah, we're all right, actually. I thought I was a bit further on than I am. Any questions? Minimum, just put your values in and you're done. MPV, let's get through this quickly then. Equals MPV, rate, cash flow. Do you not see? You already know what the answer was to the question before I asked it. Good. IRR equals IRR cash flows. Do you include year zero? Yes, you do. MIRR equals IRR cash flows, comma, cost of capital, comma, reinvestment. Do you include year zero? Yes, you do. To work out the learning curve, y equals a times x to the power of b. What is a? Good. What is x? What is the power of b? Yes, that's the power of b. Richard, how do you calculate the power of b? Divided by log 2. If the learning rate was 80%, R would be 0.8. If it's 90%, 0.9, etc. If you wanted to calculate the cost of redeemable debt, you would write out all the years, starting with a negative market value, followed by interest for all the years, and then in year 4 you'd put in capital plus interest. Cool. Then to calculate it all you'd use your what function? IRR using the things. Yeah. Cool. Good. And then how do you calculate the minimum of something, of a range of values? MIN, your values, yeah, whatever values you want to know the minimum of. Okay. Super, well done. Right, for those of you doing FR or SBR, Goodwill. H bought 40% of S. If H normally buys 40% of S, what is it? What is S? Normally. Okay, if you don't know, you don't know, it's fair enough. Normally to become a subsidiary, you have to what? Have control. So normally for it to be a subsidiary, you want 40% to be higher than 50%, to take control. So this is normally an associate, but you can have a 40% subsidiary. And they've accounted for it as a subsidiary. Maybe they should have, maybe they shouldn't have. It depends whether they controlled it or not. But we're saying they have, okay? So it is a subsidiary. H paid 20,000 cash and 20,000 loan. So they loaned them 20,000 and they gave them cash for 20,000. How much did it cost them? Not a trick. 40,000? Yeah, they gave them cash of 20, they gave them a loan of 20, it's cost them 40. That's the consideration, okay? So the fair value of consideration, 40,000. What comes next in a goodwill calculation? NCI, non-controlling interest, comes next. Right. That's okay. NCI would be 60%, the other 60%, and it's recorded at fair value. Anybody know how you value NCI at fair value? Oh no. Okay, you use the share price. So if S has 10,000 shares, how many of them would belong to the NCI? 6,000. So what's the fair value of it? What's the fair value of those 6,000 shares? 6,000 times by 1.5, which is 9,000. Thank you very much. Thank you. So NCI is 9,000. Then you take off what? For those of you who know. Fair value of? Net assets acquired. Yeah, the fair value of the assets. And you get told the book value was 9, the fair value was 13. Which figure are we going to use? The fair value, okay? You take the fair value. And if you're doing FR, Goodwill's 36,000. Thank you very much. I've passed the exam. Okay, all happy with that, hopefully. Now, you get told in SBR, the fair value adjustment, just stop there, the fair value adjustment was how much? What fair value adjustment had you made? The books of S was 9, the fair value was 13, and that's what I've used. So what fair value adjustment did I need to make? 4,000, yeah? It was 9, I want to make it fair value. So, and it says, yeah, but that 4,000 extra assets, that needs tax paying on it at 30%. Okay? So the 4,000 needs tax paying on it at 30%. So this is what you do. You've got it to there. Some of that needed tax paying. How much of that needed tax paying? 4,000. There was a 4,000 adjustment, needed tax paying of 30%. 4,000 times 30% is 1,200, well done. So I'm going to say, right, let me just take 1,200 out of the 13,000 then, because that 4,000 had tax to be paid. So you take the 1,200 out, the fair value becomes 11,800, Goodwill, therefore 37,200. It's hard, I know, particularly if you're not doing SBR. That's quite tricky. But this was based on a proper past exam paper. Actually, I think it was based on a mock paper. The examiner said, it shouldn't have been accounted for as a subsidiary. So you think, shit, okay, I've just done all that work. What do you think you're going to have to do then? It shouldn't have been. So this is what happens in SBR. They give you a spreadsheet already, which would have in Goodwill, NCI, all the net assets, deferred tax. And then you suddenly find out, well, that shouldn't be in there. What do you do then? So you get given a spreadsheet with them all in. What are you going to do in the next column? Take them all out, because it shouldn't have been. So 40,000, so in the PPS, anybody know what PPS stands for? Pre-populated spreadsheets. They give you a spreadsheet that's already been done, you just have to adjust it. So in the pre-populated spreadsheet, the 40,000 is okay. Don't worry about that, because however you treat it, you paid 40,000 for it. 9,000 you remove, just literally go to NCI and put minus 9,000. Fair value of net assets, go to all the assets listed out, take out all the numbers till it comes to 11,800. Goodwill, take it out or leave it in? Take it out. Take it out, because it's not a subsidiary anymore. So all those things need to come out. So it gets you to work out Goodwill, then says, right, now deal with it in a pre-populated spreadsheet. So can be a bit tricky, the pre-populated spreadsheet. I would love to, in the future, come back and, do, for those of you doing SBR, do a whole SBR course for a day or a whole PM course for a day. But unfortunately, we haven't got time for that at the moment. Okay, so I'm about there. MPV, we know. IRR equals IRR what? Cash flows, including year zero. MIRR, cash flows, comma, cost of capital, comma. Reinvestment, including year zero. Learning curve, Y equals number of items. No, completely wrong, Richard. Time for the first units, times by number of items to the power of, how do you calculate? B log R in brackets divided by log 2. easy when you know how. Okay. Cost of redeemable debt. How do I do it? Start with your cash flows, start with your market value. Market value is a positive or a negative? Negative. Then what? Interest. And then finally, capital plus interest. What if you had a premium on redemption of 10%? What would that 108 be? Say again? Yeah, so give me an actual number. 118. Yeah, perfect. 118. So 100 plus 10% premium, so that's 110, plus your interest that you had to pay anyway, 118. Okay, super. And then how do you actually calculate the cost of redeemable debt, which is what we're trying to do in the first place? An IRR calculation, yeah. Just do a simple IRR of all those numbers down there, and it's done it for you, and then you put it into your WACC calculation. Okay? You're doing very, very well. I'm very impressed. Okay, and calculate a minimum, min, values, calculate a maximum, equals max values, and finish the spreadsheet. There we go. Thank you very much. It's all done. Yeah, have we got any questions? Any questions in the room to begin with, as you're my favourites? Any questions in the room? So we've had no questions.
About anything or just
Well, let's keep it to accountancy. Oh, hang on. Yeah, go on, you've got a question.
You got a question? Yeah, I do.
Oh.
Well, I have 2 exams remaining.
Yeah.
And I'm continually failing. I don't know why.
You're doing what?
I'm continually failing, and I don't know why. APM and AAA.
APM and AAA?
Yeah.
Okay. AAA, probably because, have you read examiners' reports?
Yeah.
Have you? You didn't comment, did you? Good.
I think it's AAA.
Yeah.
I feel like I know the information.
Yeah.
I read the examiner report, read the technical articles, especially this last 6 months, and I think I know it, but then I did the exam.
Do you run out of time?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, timing's really hard on AAA. But honestly, what I would do personally is I would take the latest exam question that's got an examiner's report. Just do one question. You don't have to do, I'm not saying do them all. Do one question, do it properly. Notice how much time you were needing, so you'll improve your timing. Compare your answer to the marking guide. This is, by the way, all examiners do. I was a marker for the ACCA for many years. You just get given the marking guide, and you all meet up in a room, and that's it. So just compare it to the marking guide, but read the examiner's report. And the examiner's report will say something like, well, you know, what most people get wrong is this, and what they get right is this. But it's only really by doing it, and just doing one question, because I know doing a whole exam's hard. Just do one question and try that. And do the same for APM as well. It's, you know, if you've been doing it a long time, you know, and buy aCOWtancy.com. Yours for only $419. Bargain at anyone's money. Any other questions? No? About anything? Okay. I've got one. What's the best restaurant in Barbados to go to? Best restaurant? Your house, I can imagine actually. What's your favourite food? Oh, I like that. Okay. Have we got any from the room, from the internet? They've got no questions either. Okay. Just going forwards, because you know, I am thinking about doing something like this. Obviously, it's quite difficult tonight because you're all doing different papers and you're probably falling asleep while we're talking about different papers. But would it be useful to come along and do one day on the different? Yeah. And one day would be enough just to go through it quickly, like I'm doing it now. Yeah. What papers? SBR, AAA, PM.
APM for sure, because I remember in my last exam for APM, because the whole exam was structured, I kind of toggle with Spreadsheet for that.
Yeah, you use the spreadsheet a lot. Okay, well, thank you ever so much for coming tonight. I really do appreciate it. And good luck for your exams. Okay? Oh, yeah, and there's refreshments as well. It won't be as good as your food, obviously, but, you know. Thank you.
Open kitchen is nice.
What, sorry?
Open kitchen in garden.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
Choppers.
Open
kitchen. Come on.
I like open kitchen because they like the salads there.
You can get salad. You don't want salad. You want
So what you say then?
Choppers.
Champers.
Yeah.
I thought that wasn't local. Is it champers or champers?
Champers.
Like, yeah, exactly.